Hello class. So we've converted from fractions to decimals and decimals to fractions. We've converted from decimals to percent and percents to decimals. And our last is converting fractions and percents. And remember, when we're working with percents, we need to remember the phrase percent means out of 100. And this is going to help us when we change some of our fractions to decimals, to percents. So let's look at our notes on the things that we need to know. And we're going to start with fractions to percents. Whenever you change fractions to percents, it's fairly easy if you have a denominator of 100 because percent means out of 100. If you do not have a denominator of 100, you're going to have to create an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100, if you can. And then you can write that fraction as a percent. If you can't create an equivalent fraction, then you're going to have to change to decimal values, and we've already learned how to change fractions to decimals. And then you're going to have to change the decimal to a percent or a fraction, depending on what we're doing. So let's give this a try. Do the examples together. We have 77 hundredths. Remember, percent means out of 100. So anytime you have a denominator of 100, it's easy enough to create a percent because I can just change that. Instead of saying 77 out of 100, I can say 77% because that is what percent means. Sometimes we can create an equivalent fraction. 9/10. I want it to be out of 100. So I would have to multiply my denominator by 10. There's my 100, which means I also have to multiply my numerator by 10. So I have 90 out of 100. And again, percent means out of 100, so this is 90%. Whenever converting to percents to fractions, we're going to, for whole number percents, we write it at a fraction out of 100. It's the reverse of this. So 77% is 77 out of 100. So we can do that anytime we have a whole number percent. And once we've created a fraction out of 100 for whole number percents, we'll need to simplify the fraction whenever we can. If you do not have a whole number percent and you have a decimal percent value, you can change that percent to a decimal, and we've already worked on doing that, and then change that decimal to a fraction. And then you simplify the fraction. Always simplify fractions whenever you can. So let's give our examples a try. We have 36%. That is a whole number. So I can simply write that 36 out of 100. And I know I need to simplify that fraction. So we need to divide the numerator by 2 and the denominator by 2. Again, I can simplify it a little bit more to 9/25. So 36% is equal to 9/25. Let's try 7.9%. I could write it out of 100, but then it becomes a little more difficult because making equivalent, simplifying fractions with decimals as numerators is a little more complicated. So instead, I'm going to change that percent to a decimal. Remember that memory model, decimal to percent in alphabetical order. I'm going to actually make a percent to a decimal first. So I have 7.9%. I'm going to move left 2 places. I have that 0 placeholder there, so I have 0.079. Let's make that a 9. Now I can take that decimal and I can turn that into a fraction because I look at that last number and it is in the thousandths place. so I can write a fraction with a denominator of 1,000. 79 thousandths. And I can't simplify that anymore, so that's how I would leave it. 7.9% is equal to 79 thousandths. So use your notes and try these problems on your own, and we will check them in class. So now you know how to convert fractions, decimals, and percents.